What if I told you that blood means nothing when money's involved? That your own family, the people who hugged you at Christmas and smiled at your graduation, could orchestrate your erasure like it was a business strategy? I lived that. My name was scrubbed from my father's will like I never existed. My brother? Crowned heir to everything. But the truth? Oh, the truth was buried deep. And when I found it, I didn't just expose them. I ended them. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's about those quiet wars fought behind closed doors, about silent vengeance, inheritance battles, fraud that stretches across oceans, and a family so tangled in corruption even the lawyers needed lawyers. But here's the twist. The real weapon wasn't power. It was proof. Cold, hard proof. So, let me ask you something. What would you do if your family wrote you out of your own legacy? Would you walk away quietly, or would you burn everything down and build something better from the ashes? If you're curious to find out how this ends, you're not going to want to miss a second of what comes next. And hey, tap that like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, this isn't just a story, it's a warning. I remember the exact moment everything inside me broke. We were all at the lawyer's office, mahogany walls, old leather chairs, and that suffocating smell of wealth and finality. Gerald Whitman read the will aloud like it was a Shakespearean tragedy, his voice steady, eyes avoiding mine. To my eldest son, Bradley Morgan, I leave the entirety of the Morgan estate, including all shares in Morgan Holdings. And just like that, everything I ever worked for, every weekend I sacrificed, every broken holiday dinner where I covered for Dad's shady decisions, went to Bradley. Not a word about me, not a dollar, not even a damn watch. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, but something inside me shifted, hard. That kind of betrayal doesn't hit like a slap, it seeps in like poison. I glanced at my brother, his smug little smile, the subtle squeeze of Mom's hand under the table. They knew, they all knew. Even Linda, our mother, with her silent loyalty, didn't flinch. She just stared ahead like pretending I didn't exist would make it true. That's when I knew, this wasn't a mistake, it was a conspiracy, a full-on orchestration to erase me, and that's when I made a promise, quiet but volcanic. You're going to fall, Bradley, and it's going to hurt. Growing up, everyone thought Bradley was the golden boy. Perfect grades, perfect teeth, perfect lies. But I knew better. He wasn't a genius. He was a collector of other people's efforts. My efforts, most of the time. Dad used to say I had the brains, but Bradley had the charisma. That was his way of saying, you do the work, he gets the credit. I didn't fight it then. I thought I was playing the long game. Turns out, the only game was me being played. Here's the part that stung the most. I helped build Morgan Holdings. I was the quiet force behind half the mergers, the strategist behind the international expansion, the one who caught the loopholes and patched the financial holes before they sank us. And all that was worth nothing in Richard Morgan's eyes. His real legacy was Bradley. His real son, apparently, the heir. Me? Just the backup plan they forgot to update. A week after the will, Bradley threw a party. Not a private dinner or a family gathering, a full-blown media event with champagne, camera crews, and a speech that sounded like a campaign launch. I'm honored to carry my father's vision forward, he said, pausing for applause. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just inheritance. It was a coup. They were polishing him up for the public, rebranding him as the brilliant son who would save the company, and I was supposed to disappear quietly. But I'm not the disappearing type. 3 days later, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the safe in my apartment. Not just any safe, Dad's old safe, the one he gave me when I turned 30, filled with papers, dusty keys, and what looked like decades of tax records. He probably thought I'd never go through it. And truth is, I never cared. Until now. That's where I found it. A single yellow folder with one name scribbled in Dad's handwriting, Maddox Holdings. I'd never heard of it. It wasn't part of Morgan Holdings. But something told me, right then, it was the crack in the armor. I called Monica. She used to be a forensic accountant for a hedge fund that collapsed under a fraud scandal. Brilliant, discreet, and fiercely loyal to me. We weren't married, but she was my person, the one who believed in my potential even when my own father didn't. I showed her the file. She blinked twice, flipped through the pages, then looked at me like she'd just seen a ghost. Caleb, this isn't just offshore. This is illegal. Turns out, Maddox Holdings wasn't a company. It was a front, A shell used to siphon money out of Morgan Holdings. Millions. And guess whose name showed up as the silent beneficiary? Bradley Morgan. That was the first nail in the coffin. And I hadn't even started hammering yet. Monica didn't even finish her wine that night. She just started digging. Financial records, tax loopholes, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Maddox Holdings was a ghost company. No employees, no office, just a P.O. box and a web of wire transfers that smelled like corruption and financial crimes on steroids. I kept thinking, how long had this been going on? And how could Dad let this happen? But the more we uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't just Bradley being greedy. It was a whole family cover-up. I confronted Mom first. I showed her the documents. She didn't cry, didn't even blink. She just said, "Your father did what he thought was best for the company." Best for the company? Falsifying documents and hiding assets? That was when it sank in. Linda wasn't a bystander. She was a silent partner. Her signature appeared on 2 of the Maddox wire approvals. This wasn't just betrayal, it was organized betrayal. A lifetime of conspiração and manipulação dressed up as family dinners and holiday cards. A few nights later, I had a dream where my father was watching me from across a dark table, not saying anything, just tapping a pen, smiling. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing, mind spinning. I needed more. Proof wasn't enough. I wanted power. So I called Gerald Whitman, the family lawyer, the same guy who read my erasure out loud. I told him I had something he needed to see. He hesitated, but Gerald always had one foot in ethics and the other in self-preservation. I offered him the foot he'd been keeping out of prison. That changed his tone real quick. We met at a quiet bar on 53rd Street. I slid the Maddox file across the table. Gerald stared at it like it might bite. "This is substantial," he muttered, fingers trembling. "If this goes public..." I finished his sentence. "The Morgans go down." He nodded slowly, then said the one thing I didn't expect. "There's more. Turns out Dad had a second will, one he never filed, dated 2 months before his death. And in that version, everything went to me. I nearly dropped my drink. Gerald said he didn't know why Richard never submitted it. Maybe cold feet. Maybe Bradley found out and manipulated him into changing it. But that second will, it was real. And it was enough to turn everything upside down. We needed to verify it, file it, and prepare for war. But if I filed too soon, they'd bury the evidence. If I waited too long, they'd bury me. So I decided on something else. I'd turn their own lies into a weapon. Monica and I started feeding leaks. Nothing too big, just hints. A missed transaction here, a strange document there. We created noise, enough to get the board of Morgan Holdings asking questions, enough to get Bradley paranoid, and paranoid people make mistakes. 1 week later, he made his first, a public statement denying any connection to offshore activity, which was perfect because we had a video of him in Dubai 5 years ago toasting with a Maddox Holdings investor, champagne and all. We weren't just building a case, we were setting a stage. Every lie they'd told was now a spotlight. Every move they made, we were 2 steps ahead. I stopped trying to win back the family. They weren't mine anymore. This wasn't about reconciliação. This was about justiça e vingança. Quiet, surgical, devastating. And just when we thought we had control, Monica's phone rang. It was her old contact from the SEC, and he had a message. "Bradley's under investigation, and your name just came up." Monica froze. Her hand clutched the phone like it might explode. "He said your name came up, Caleb," she whispered, "in the investigation, as a potential co-conspirator." That's when the room started spinning. I had been so careful, so methodical, but I hadn't really thought about how deep I was already buried in all this. The money, the documents, the leaks, and worse, the Maddox Holdings paper trail that traced back to the safe in my apartment. It looked bad, like I was part of it all along. Like maybe I had helped them hide the money before flipping the script. I wanted to punch something. Instead, I paced. Monica kept throwing out options. Legal defense, whistleblower status, even disappearing for a while. But running wasn't my style, especially not now. "They're turning this on me," I muttered. "They're trying to frame me before I frame them." Because that's what this was. A Guerra Fria entre irmãos. And Bradley, smiling, polished, charming Bradley, was playing dirty. He had power now. He had access. And I was a liability. That night, I did something I swore I wouldn't. I went to the house. The Morgan house. Childhood memories be damned. Linda answered the door in her silk robe, wine in hand, expression flat. "You shouldn't be here," she said, like I was the help that forgot to use the back entrance. I didn't flinch. I walked right past her, straight into the study where Bradley was nursing a glass of scotch like some cheap Bond villain. "Framing me," I said. "That's your next move?" He didn't deny it. He didn't even blink, just looked up, smirked, and said, "Prove it." That's when I knew I had to escalate. We needed hard evidence, not just documents, not just financial trails, something undeniable, something human. That's when Monica suggested the unthinkable: wiretapping. She had contacts, people who did things for people like us, people with nothing left to lose. I hated the idea, but I hated Bradley more. So we planted the device in the one place we knew he'd feel untouchable: his yacht. He loved bragging there, loved talking big deals with small minds over expensive wine and fake loyalty. It was the perfect trap, and we got lucky. 3 days in, he brought a guest on board. Some obscure finance guy from Hong Kong with ties to shell companies. And Bradley spilled every single thing. Talked about the offshore transfers, the payments to Richard Morgan in exchange for cleaning the books, the altered documents, even admitted the second will existed, but claimed he had taken care of that. My jaw clenched when I heard it. He burned it, said it with pride, like that was his checkmate. But it wasn't, because what Bradley didn't know was that Gerald, the lawyer, had made a copy, just in case. And that copy was now in my safe. The recording from the yacht? It was gold. No, platinum. Monica spent all night editing it down to the essentials. Names, numbers, dates, and that one chilling line: "I took care of that second will." Hearing Bradley say it so casually, so damn arrogantly, was the punchline of a twisted joke. But here's the thing about confessions like that. They're only powerful when they're heard by the right people. And I wasn't about to waste this in a courtroom. I wanted a bigger audience, one that included shareholders, executives, board members, and the public. So we timed it with the Morgan Holdings annual gala, the biggest night of the year. Black tie, red carpet, champagne tower levels of arrogance. Bradley would be center stage, delivering his vision speech about expansion, sustainability, all the empty buzzwords he stole from my old presentations. And that's when we'd strike. I bought a ticket using an alias, dressed like a damn Wall Street vampire, and waited for my cue. Meanwhile, Monica coordinated everything from a hotel across the street. She was the real puppeteer, stream ready, projection aligned, backup files stored on 3 continents. At exactly 9:12 p.m., as Bradley held the microphone and thanked our investors for believing in the Morgan legacy, the screens behind him flickered. For a second, people thought it was a tech glitch. But then the audio kicked in. His voice, the yacht, the confession, gasps. One woman dropped her drink, someone else cursed out loud. And Bradley? He froze. Linda stood from her seat, visibly trembling. Gerald Whitman, in the crowd, looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. The board members turned to each other, mouths hanging open. The room wasn't just shocked, it was electric. I stepped out from the back, made eye contact with my brother, and for the first time in my life, I saw him afraid. Not mad, not smug, afraid. It was delicious. Security swarmed the stage. Bradley tried to talk, but the mic was dead. All eyes turned to me. I didn't need a speech. I simply walked up, held out a sealed envelope, the copy of the second will, and handed it to the chairman of the board. "This belongs to the real heir," I said. And then, just for effect, I smiled. It wasn't over. Not even close. Because the SEC wasn't the only entity watching that broadcast. The IRS had just joined the party. The gala video went viral overnight. And not just on finance blogs or corporate LinkedIn. We're talking news cycles, Reddit threads, podcasts. One anchor actually said, "It's like Succession had a baby with American greed." I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little proud. But pride doesn't keep you safe when federal agencies start making calls. By sunrise, the SEC had frozen several Morgan Holdings accounts, and the IRS was requesting audits that reached back 15 years. Bradley wasn't just in trouble, he was radioactive. Funny thing? He still tried to spin it, held a press conference, claimed the recording was edited, manipulated, a malicious fabrication. But the internet had already turned. Comment sections were brutal. Old employees started speaking out. Anonymous tips poured in. Turns out, people had been waiting for a reason to expose the Morgans, and I had given them the perfect excuse. Justice and vengeance had finally become a group project. But here's where things got personal again. Linda, my mother, if I can still call her that, showed up at my apartment, unannounced. No makeup, no wine glass, just her and those tired eyes I used to believe in. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't apologize. She just said, "You destroyed your brother." Not exposed, not revealed the truth. Destroyed. And that's when it hit me. She never loved us equally. Her allegiance was never about right or wrong. It was about control. She saw Bradley's fall as her own failure, and mine as betrayal. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I just told her what she needed to hear. I didn't destroy him. He destroyed himself. I just turned on the lights. She left without another word, but I could feel it. This wasn't over for her. There's something terrifying about a person who thinks they're above justice. And Linda Morgan, she didn't just believe it. She embodied it. A week later, Monica found something else. Not about Bradley, about Richard, my father. Turns out the Maddox Holdings scandal wasn't even the beginning. Before Bradley, before offshore accounts, there was another shell company. Older, deeper, and it was tied to real estate deals that led to evictions, land seizures, even political bribes. It made Maddox look like pocket change. My father had built a dynasty on manipulation, fraud, and falsification. And someone else knew, Gerald. He had documents, hidden, stored, protected like a nuclear secret. So I made another call and set up another meeting. Gerald was jumpy, more than usual. He kept glancing at the blinds like someone might shoot through them. "This goes beyond your brother," he whispered, sliding a manila envelope across the table. This is what your father kept from everyone." I opened it, half expecting another bank statement or offshore report. But no, this was worse. These were deeds, transaction logs, political donation receipts that didn't make sense, until I realized they were bribes. My father had used Morgan Holdings to buy influence, bury investigations, and, get this, steal property from grieving families. One name appeared multiple times: Whitestone Acres, a massive land deal from 2 decades ago. My father had displaced over 30 families to build luxury condos. The entire neighborhood was a casualty of his ambition, and the paperwork had his signature, and Linda's, and Gerald's. I looked up, eyes burning. "You were in on this?" He didn't deny it. He just said, "I was trying to survive him, just like you." The irony? I had spent years hating Bradley for stealing what was mine, but the real monster was Richard Morgan, and my mother helped him. This wasn't just trahison familiar, it was generational rot, corruption that fed on silence and loyalty and inheritance like vultures. And now I had all the evidence, every rotten root, every falsification and shell company and payout, all traceable, all explosive. And suddenly, I had a choice: burn it all down or use it. I chose both. We built a report. Monica turned it into a digital bomb, interactive, precise, with footnotes, timelines, testimonies. Think, the Panama Papers, but personal. We sent it to journalists, regulators, lawyers. And within 48 hours, the Morgan name went from legacy to liability. Stock tanked. Executives resigned. The board issued a statement distancing itself from the Morgan leadership era. It wasn't just Bradley being erased now, it was all of them. And that's when Linda struck back. She filed a motion to block the second will, claimed I forged it, hired a forensic expert who testified the ink didn't match. It was a bold move, desperate, but dangerous, because it dragged everything into court, public court. And with that came media, and with media came pressure, and with pressure came cracks. Bradley cornered, panicked. He tried to cut a deal, tried to throw Linda under the bus in exchange for immunity. But here's the thing. There's no honor among thieves. And Linda, she recorded his phone call. The recording dropped like a nuke. Bradley begging Linda to take the fall, offering to spin the narrative so she'd look like the grieving widow swept up in Richard's schemes, promising to take care of her with a slice of offshore money if she kept his name clean. The media ate it alive. Overnight, the story shifted again, from family scandal to full-blown dynasty collapse. The Morgans weren't just corrupt, they were cannibals. And the public? They couldn't look away. Linda went silent. Radio silent. No interviews, no statements, not even her usual vague threats through lawyers. I knew that silence. It wasn't surrender. It was strategy. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And just when I started wondering what her next move would be, subpoenas landed at my door. Apparently, she was suing me for defamation and theft. Claimed I hacked family files, stole documents from the safe, and manipulated Gerald into falsifying the second will. Cute, right? I smiled as I read the papers, because the only thing better than knowing the truth is having it documented. Gerald flipped. Full immunity in exchange for testimony. Monica and I had every file backed up. Dates, originals, metadata. I wasn't just ready for court, I was begging for it. They had tried to erase me, frame me, destroy me. But now, I was the last Morgan standing who didn't need a lawyer whispering in my ear. The trial began 2 months later. Media packed the room. Headlines were brutal. Heir versus heir. The fall of the Morgans. Inheritance of shame. Linda walked in like royalty, cold and composed. Bradley looked like a ghost in a suit. Me? I didn't wear black. I wore navy, sharp, confident, alive. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the reckoning. The courtroom felt like theater. Testimonies, exhibits, objections. Every time someone said, "Mr. Morgan," 3 heads turned, but only one held eye contact with the jury. The turning point came on day 6. Monica took the stand. Calm, articulate, devastating. She walked them through everything. How we found Maddox, the yacht recordings, the real estate fraud. She made them feel it, not just see it. And when she said, they didn't just steal from Caleb, they stole his name, his future, and his father's legacy, the jury didn't flinch. But Linda did. Her jaw twitched. Just once. But enough. I knew I had her. And I hadn't even called my last witness. My final witness wasn't a person. It was a screen. On the last day of trial, I requested permission to play one last piece of evidence. The judge approved reluctantly. The lights dimmed, and the projector clicked on. What appeared was simple. A compilation? Footage of displaced families from the Whitestone Acres fraud, interviews, eviction letters, an old voicemail of Richard Morgan cursing out a city inspector, and finally, security cam footage. Linda, laughing, sipping wine at a country club while families packed their lives into boxes. No music, just silence and betrayal on loop. People gasped. A few jurors teared up. Even the judge leaned forward. And then the screen froze on one last quote, spoken by my father on a recorded board meeting. Legacy isn't about truth, it's about control. Boom. The verdict came fast. Bradley was found guilty of financial fraud and obstruction of justice, sentenced to 8 years, with assets seized and his public image scorched beyond repair. Linda avoided prison, barely, but lost everything, her board seat, her shares, her reputation. And me? The court validated the second will. I was declared the rightful heir of Morgan Holdings. But I didn't take over the company. I dissolved it, every last piece, sold assets, paid out former employees, donated to the families impacted by the Whitestone scandal, and I gave Monica a seat at every table moving forward. She earned it. Without her, I'd be another erased man in a silk coffin. She kept me grounded, reminded me that revenge is sweet, but justice is sacred. Funny thing? A month later, I received a letter. No name, just a note. This isn't over. No doubt it was Linda, and that's fine. Let her come. I'm ready. And now let me ask you, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have kept your head down, hoping someone else would make it right? Or would you have gone all the way, even if it meant taking down the very people who raised you? Because sometimes, the real enemy isn't a stranger. It's the smile at your own table, the voice that says, "I love you," while forging your name on a document meant to erase you. And when the inheritance hits the table, that's when the masks come off and the knives come out. Have you ever gone through something like this? A family betrayal, a battle over inheritance, a shocking twist you never saw coming? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one, because stories like these aren't rare. They're just hidden. If this one hit home, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because every week, we bring you raw, powerful stories that most people are too afraid to tell. I'll see you in the next one.
Hi, you are on the Moving Narratives channel. Subscribe and follow our stories.